Hello, this is Andrea Hendricks. Let's talk about inverse trig functions. Specifically, we're going to look at the graph of the inverse sine function and determine the domain and range of that function and evaluate the function. We're going to do that as well for the cosine, and inverse tangent functions. And lastly, we're going to talk about how to evaluate the composition of trig functions. But before we get into finding the inverse trig functions, let me review with you some basic facts about inverse functions. Do you recall that if you have an ordered pair x, y on the graph of a function f, on the inverse function that becomes the ordered pair yx. In other words, the x and y values are interchanged on a function and its inverse. Another important fact about inverse functions is that only one-to-one functions have inverse functions. One-to-one functions are functions that pass the horizontal line test. If a function is not one-to-one, we can restrict the domain of that function to make it one-to-one as long as on that restriction of its domain all of the range values are covered. And finally, the domain and range of a function and its inverse are reverse of one another. That is, if we look at a function f of x and we know what the domain and range are, well, in a function f inverse, the domain and range are interchanged. So that is, the range of the function f is equal to the domain of its inverse. So this would be equal to the range of f. And the domain of f is equal to the range of f inverse. Okay, so we'll stop here, and the next video I'll pick up on how to find the inverse sine function.